Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Medlock Post radio show. And I'm your host, Richard G. Medlock. This is where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. Today is August 10th, 2022. And today's episode is entitled, The FBI to the Rescue. And yeah, you're probably laughing, I know. The views and opinions on the Medlock Post radio show are the views and opinions of the host, and they are not necessarily the views and opinions of Spreaker.com, its corporations, affiliates, or any other podcast streaming services. And I might add, we have a guest with us today, and those opinions are his opinions. And so we have to cover ourselves on that, and the only people that are going to get in trouble are myself and our guest today. And we're not going to get in trouble. We stay pretty decent. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in some challenging times. We have some things that are moving pretty fast right now in America. And they have been moving pretty fast for a long time. However, America is still standing. And will continue to stand as we the people stand up for our freedoms and our rights. And that's what we're doing, and that's part of what this show is about. But it's also to educate and to inform. Now, I'd like to read a quote by Baron de Montesquieu, and he was one of the people the Founding Fathers looked to in guidance for establishing the Constitution, establishing this great land, this great experiment, it's been called. He was a follower of Cicero, and a lot of his philosophy came from that trend of thought. But this is what he said, quote, "There is no crueler tyranny than that which is perpetuated under the shield of law and in the name of justice," unquote. I think that's very appropriate for the discussion we're going to have today. Now, I also want to read this. And I didn't tell the guest I was going to do this, and I should have. But this is the FBI oath of office. And it's I, state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God. So with that, I would like to introduce our guest, Jim Ferver, who is a retired FBI agent. Jim, welcome to the Medlock Post.
Good morning, Richard. It's nice to hear that oath of office. I took that a long time ago, served faithfully for 31 and a half years, and that was always in the foremost of my mind to protect and defend the Constitution. I don't know how seriously new agents take that today, but in my day, that was very important part of the job. So thank you for having me on your show today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your service and your patriotism, and we're really looking forward to comments you have to make today. And Jim, we're under no time limit here, so we can go 3 hours, but I've got to be somewhere in 2.5 hours or in an hour and a half, so we're not going to go 3 hours. But Jim, one of the things, you mentioned the oath and how seriously some of them take it today, and on one of my podcasts last month, I read the oath of office for president and vice president and senator, and I said, it's interesting that they take these oaths and they swear allegiance to the Constitution, to upholding it, to fight our enemies, but then they become our enemies. And one of the things that I said maybe they don't take that oath serious because it comes from the Constitution and they're trying to destroy the Constitution. So that's just a train of thought that I want to throw out there. Jim.
Yes, sir.
The last couple of days, actually 3 days since Sunday, since that Inflation Reduction phony act was passed, a socialist constitution basically, and then Monday, Trump's home was searched. I don't want to use the word raided because they did everything protocol by the book. You know, they were stopped by Secret Service at the gate. They showed their documents. Secret Service allowed them to go in. They called Trump's attorney. The attorney came there. She was there the whole time. So I don't want to use the word raided. That connotates, you know, they're going in with guns ready to blaze or something like that. But here's some facts that we know about this situation. And Christina Babb, who was one of Trump's attorneys, was called. She was on the scene. She got there about an hour after the FBI started their searching. And she said it was orderly. They didn't tear up anything, and they left things in a pretty orderly manner. But she's still trying to find out how the warrant came about. She's still looking into that, and I want us to get into that warrant a little bit and how that process works. So, Jim, could you walk us through that and how that warrant process should work? And, of course, they went to Judge Bruce Reinhart, a local federal magistrate, who signed off and then sealed the affidavit. So could you walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. I've had both experience as a street agent and then later as a supervisor of having to review search warrant affidavits and preparing search warrant applications I worked quite a number of years against the La Cosa Nostra, the mafia up in New Jersey, and so some of those were particularly complicated because of some of the things we were searching for. But the whole idea that is, and of course it follows the Fourth Amendment and the Bill of Rights, search and seizure, that you have to search, you have to have probable cause as a source for that search warrant affidavit. So that outline of the requirements that you have to have for that is it has to be a particular specific item at a particular specific location at a particular specific time. And that time element is very important because if I had I wanted to search a mob house for whatever reason, we would have to have an informant, or we would have to have a cooperating witness, or somebody that could access that house that could tell us that if we're looking for gambling records, they would have to come back and say, on August 9th, I was in Joe Schmo's house and I saw gambling records by the subject's computer. Okay. Or that he had knowledge that he was standing there while the wise guy was making bets on his computer, which would give us probable cause to seize the computer. So my question, the first thing that popped in my head when I saw that was, who had access to President Trump's house, residence, Mar-a-Lago? How did they get fresh probable cause? It's been around since he left office that there were boxes and so forth, which again, if they're not top secret, or if it's no threat to national security or whatever. What criminal act has he allegedly done, and how could they get fresh probable cause? Who was there that saw that? It's a number of questions that I had in my mind that's saying that's very interesting, because sometimes when would go into a U.S. magistrate, and a lot of times we would rough draft the affidavit, and then the federal prosecutor, the assistant U.S. attorney, would go over it and make sure it was legally viable and make sure we had enough probable cause. But even in spite of that, when you went in front of the magistrate, as a supervisor, I would go in, and sometimes he would go over it with me, and he would say, well, you have this source. Has this source been credible? How long have you been operating them? Has he always had reliable information? So you try to corroborate. Generally, you wouldn't try to have just one source information, because how can you tell if the guy come in with a lie just to give you probable cause to go into the wise guy's house? So you'd either have him going in multiple times, or you would have separate informants, or you may have for instance, I used one time a guy who worked for the water company, who was going in there doing some reading a meter inside the basement of the guy's house, and he saw gambling records. It's like, for example. So if you can get multiple sources, that's even better. So I'm saying to myself, when they went before the magistrate, did the magistrate say, how stale is it? How long ago did this happen? Because if the person that went in there and got the information for probable cause it happened 2 months ago, most likely the magistrate, the judge, would say, oh, you need to refreshen your probable cause. We don't know, and during that 2 months, if the person removed it. So how do we know that it's still there? So there's a lot of different issues that have to be done before a magistrate can actually issue a search warrant.
Okay.
So
well, all right. We'll wrap this up when we come back after this break, Jim. And don't anybody go away. We're getting a lot of good information and some details that we need to have discussions with people. So hang on, folks. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. This is the Medlock Post radio show. I'm your host, Richard G. Medlock, and we have with us today Jim Ferber, who is a retired FBI agent, and he is really helping us understand the process of how. I thought I had turned the music off, and I didn't. All right. Helping us understand the process of how to get a federal warrant. Now, Jim, you mentioned that you needed access, you needed witnesses that saw that a particular item was in a particular place at a particular time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, okay, finish your...
I just like to add, I'm sorry, that's background noise. I just like to add that I'm going to move away from that other phone. I'm sorry, I got distracted there for a second. So what I'd like to say is that once you have that information. Oh, darn, I forgot where. Could you go back again and come back to, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about a specific item in a specific place on a specific time.
Oh, I know where I was. So, if you have the example I use is it limits where you can search as well. So, for example, if you're looking for an elephant and you walk into a room and an elephant can't fit in the room, then you can't search that room. So, depending on what specifically they said they are searching for, that limits the areas in that house where they can search.
Okay.
So that puts another limit on. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we're talking about limits here, and they're limits under the law. Now, going back to the fact of the item was here on this date in this location. Christina Babb said that in this ongoing back and forth with the Department of Justice since Trump left office, and he had one of his officials, Kash Patel, claim that Trump took classified documents. That was completely proven wrong, that Kash Patel lied. So that was one instance. But in June of this year, June of 2022, the FBI and the Department of Justice and their attorneys were allowed access into the area at Mar-a-Lago where they stored all the stuff from the White House. And they spent all day there going through every box. Trump's attorneys were there. Trump even came by and talked to them and was very nice. And, hey, you need anything? We don't have anything to hide, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is according to Christina Babb, his attorney, and she was there in June. And she said they were here. They went through everything, and they didn't take one item. And then they come back in August, 2 months later. Now, Jim, could they have used the fact that they were there in June as we saw it, it was there, and it was there on this date, but it's 2 months ago?
Well, I'm sure they could, but all the U.S. magistrates I ever dealt with would turn around and say, you need to refresh that, because how do we know 2 months ago that they haven't done something? I mean, I go back to my example with Wise Guys. If they move everything from one guy, all the gambling records from one guy's house to the next guy's house within those 2 months, it looks pretty embarrassing if you go in there with a search warrant and find nothing. So I will be I'll be very interested to see what they say they came up with in this search. It'll be very interesting when that comes out, because if they've already had an opportunity to examine all that stuff, and I'm sure President Trump's attorneys are going to go back and say, there's no reason for you to have this search warrant, because there's the document that we offered 2 months ago. So
yeah, and that's the point that Trump's attorneys are making. We've been open, cooperative. If you wanted to see them again, we'll open the door. So it just keeps leaning toward this was a political stunt type of thing, which a lot of people are calling it. And when you start drawing these conclusions from the facts we're seeing, now they did take 12 boxes of documents, all paper documents, Monday. Now, earlier, I'm not sure when they did this, but they had already sent 15 boxes over to the National Archives from stuff that he'd brought from the White House. So if there's anything classified, it would be sitting in the National Archives right now. So
you would think, yeah, you would think so, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing of it is, I don't believe that they have revoked Trump's authorization.
Top secret.
Yeah, I don't think they've revoked that. So when we start looking at what's been going on for months, versus what happened Monday, it's kind of interesting. Now, this Judge Bruce Reinhardt, who's a local federal magistrate, has an interesting past. I don't know if you've heard this. He's been a magistrate since 2018, and a magistrate deals with matters including bond hearings and signing off on search warrants. He had previously served as a special prosecutor, a federal prosecutor, and then he left that and became defense counsel for most of or some of Jeffrey Epstein's employees. That included pilots, a scheduler named Sarah Kellen, and a woman whom some of Epstein's victims said was his sex slave. And the newspaper said in 2011, Reinhardt was named in a lawsuit and accused of violating Justice Department policy by representing Epstein employees. And of course, he denied wrongdoing and all this. So it's you guys can draw your own conclusion about the judge. So, where
I know that is a common practice. I know some of the assistant U.S. attorneys that I worked with. I can just off the top of my head a fellow that was very aggressive in prosecuting Eurasian and organized crime, Russian organized crime, and when he decided that the federal government wasn't paying him enough money to prosecute these guys, he became defense counsel and represented them, and got rich on it. So it's not unusual but that's a problem with the Department of Justice too, because then you have a fellow who knows how to put all the evidence together, and then he flips around and becomes a defense counsel, and he's facing his former colleagues and can do a much better job of defending these guys. But so that is interesting. I had not known that before. And who appointed him as a U.S. magistrate? That's the next thing I wonder.
Well, it was 2018, and Trump was president.
Yeah. So
he could have taken a recommendation from somebody and really didn't know the guy, and it's a federal magistrate. They're not sitting on a district court or anything like that. So. Who knows what goes on here. And then in the Department of Justice, there were some funny things going on in 2018 as well. So we just move on from there.
Well, let me say that. Let me just add on to your comment. There is something that people have to understand too, and I think I'm not. I've been gone long enough. I retired 2005, so don't look at it as that I'm standing up for any actions that's taken. I'm not defending the FBI or what they did. However, I can compare with what happened when I was on duty as compared to what's going on today. And the thing is, back in my day, when you had Louis Freeh, Director Freeh, or when you had even way back, Clarence Kelly was the first director, and there was a group of directors. William Webster was really a fine man, and he was very unbiased. And I think back then, the independence of the FBI was paramount, and that goes the whole way back to J. Edgar Hoover. So, what has happened is there's been a slide, a gradual slide. I think going back to 9/11 and before that, maybe Whitey Bulger up in. I remember right as I was getting ready to retire, that whole Whitey Bulger thing where he got too close to an agent up there. That was the first time I remember where the Department of Justice stepped in and they told the FBI, no, from here on out, we have to know who all your informants are. Well, that was internal fight there between the FBI and Department of Justice, because if I'm using an informant for probable cause for a search warrant, and then the assistant U.S. attorney that I'm working for resigns and he goes to work for the bad guys as a defense attorney, he's going to know who the informant was. I don't know whether this has anything to do. That may be the reason why this magistrate sealed the affidavit, because if it's single source information in that affidavit, perhaps they don't want to expose that fellow to MSNBC and Fox and everybody else. Yeah, they may be doing it for protection of him,
or to Trump's attorneys.
Or which I'm sure the attorneys will file motions to get that revealed. But anyway, the point I was making is it has become more and more of an issue where the attorney generals are saying, well, the FBI works for us. So instead of the FBI predicating investigations like they have since 1924 when Hoover took over, now you have federal prosecutors that are assistant U.S. attorneys that are basically putting their input with the FBI and saying, oh, I'm gathering this from what appears to be the case is that the Department of Justice is leading the investigations, which happens a lot in county like county solicitors' offices, and a lot of times the county solicitors' offices have their detectives that do the investigation and then they prosecute. But traditionally, the FBI did the investigation.
Yeah, and Jim, let's come back to that. I've got a question.
Okay.
I want to put on top of what you're saying, but we'll do that when we get back from this break. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back from our break. This is the Medlock Post radio show, and I'm your host, Richard G. Medlock. And let me read a quote before we get back to Jim. And Jim has just given us some wonderful information and some wonderful insight into what's going on, not only with the Trump situation, but also within the FBI. But here's a quote from Barack Obama. And this is a real tell on the situation. It says, quote, "They'll tell you that tyranny is always lurking just around the corner. You should reject these voices," unquote. Now, when you hear somebody like that tell you, wait a minute, don't listen to all the bad stuff we're doing, just listen to what we tell you, and don't worry about anything else. So, Jim, let's go back. If you want to comment on that quote, you can.
Well, I was just going to say, I just recall that one of his mentors out in Chicago was a domestic terrorist. So, take that for what it's worth.
Yes, and a lot, and other associates that were terrorists and everything else. Now, going back to what you were saying about within the FBI and how the Department of Justice has basically inserted themselves into the FBI, and has caused some problems. We had the Russian hoax going after Trump, and the spying on the Trump administration, etc. But do you see this as one of the problems of the administrative state just exerting their power over other agencies to get them to do what the administrative state wants to do? It's all yours now.
Well, sure. Well, you just have to look at the IRS and how they targeted conservatives. I don't think I'm making an allegation there. I think that's pretty fact-based right there. And you don't know Department of Homeland Security. You don't know what NSA is doing you don't know whether they're doing domestic spying. We really because they're so secretive. You really don't know what they have NSA doing or what the CIA is doing. So, but the bottom line is this politicization of government agency is, I think it's concern and a danger for everybody. And the fact is, in the past, the FBI has been like the light on the shining hill that you got justice. You had the blind lady with the justice scales and equal justice for all, but you just have to look at the facts about what has happened, including the fact that the whole Russian hoax was found to be a hoax, all those allegations, and then you have Roger Stone, where they send a SWAT team for a white collar subject, and then you have Manafort, and you've got Bannon, and all those guys have been targeted, and the president has been targeted. In the meantime, the divide line. Do we even know if there's any kind of investigation on Hunter Biden and his financial activities? How about
I mean, he should have been raided with what he had going on, and where's the laptop?
Where's the search warrant? And not only him, but Nancy Pelosi's husband. They made millions of dollars. Yeah, made millions of dollars with China, and you can just go down the list, and there's that Chinese wall where it seems like the Department of Justice. It's hard to say that it's not arbitrary when they seem to be targeting one set against and ignoring another set. It's just
double standard.
Yeah, as an exception to logic. Doesn't make logic sense for that to happen.
Well, we're not seeing a lot of logic coming out of the Democratic Socialist period. Let me Mark Elias, a former Clinton attorney, and also I'm not sure if he still works for the DOJ today or not, but he put out a Twitter yesterday, a twit basically, and he's got in this 18 U.S. Code 2071, concealment, removal, or mutilation generally. And this is Section B. Whoever having the custody of any such record, proceeding, map, book, document, paper, or other thing willfully and unlawfully conceals, removes, mutilates, obliterates, falsifies, or destroys the same shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both, and shall forfeit his office and be disqualified from holding any office under the United States. As used in this subsection, the term office does not include the office held by any person as a retired officer of the Armed Forces of the United States. So, he put this out, and he's been attacked because a lot of attorneys have come out and said this code does not apply to the President of the United States, the Vice President, and other elected officials. So I think Mark Elias was trying to just stir up some good things. Now, let's remember, he was the Clintons' attorney. He was Hillary Clinton's attorney. And going from what he's jumping here, so if we take this statute and say it does apply, then that would mean that Hillary cannot run for office. Now, so she destroyed classified material.
Yes, she did. Yep.
So, but shall forfeit his office and be disqualified. So apparently you have to be in office for this to count. And she was in office and out of office. But anyway, so there was some responses to this. Jay Rosen, an attorney, came back. He's at New York University. And I want to get your comments on these quotes, Jim. During Monday's raid, FBI agents worked in taint teams while gathering and separating the alleged classified materials to ensure that none was privileged correspondence between Trump and his lawyers, which would be off limits to investigators and prosecutors. Disqualified. One perplexing aspect of the Mar-a-Lago search, at least to some legal analysts, is that the crime reportedly being investigated does not seem to match the unprecedented tactic of an FBI search of a former president's residence. If they raided his home just to find classified documents he took from the White House, he will be re-elected president in 2024, hands down. It will prove to be the greatest law enforcement mistake in history. There was a burst of excitement from the Democratic legal side about Mark Elias's quote that I just read. So what are your comments about what I just read from Jay Rosen?
Well, I think, I remember doing a background. This is when I was out in Illinois, and somebody was nominated to be a federal judge, and they actually had to do information that we could not see because of the people that were connected with this fellow, and so they had to again, what they call a Chinese wall. They have somebody that has no players in the game that sits back and reviews that information to determine if it's something that can be added into the investigation or if it has to be kept separate from the investigation. So, yeah, that's again, but that's a Department of Justice call. I wonder if there were federal prosecutors. I wonder if there were assistant U.S. attorneys in the search or actually there during the search.
Christina Babb said there wasn't. It was only FBI agents, because when she got there, she asked to see the warrant and affidavit, and it took she said about an hour of discussion before they even made a copy and gave her a copy of the warrant, not the affidavit. And so, but I don't think she didn't mention any attorneys were there Monday, but Department of Justice attorneys were there in June when they went through the same stuff that they took out of there Monday.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. So, but the agents were on the phone. It sounds to me like they were talking back and forth because they weren't going to do anything that the Department of Justice would say, no, we told the FBI not to do that and put the FBI in a trick bag. They weren't going to play that game. They were going to be on the phone with the assistant U.S. attorney to determine what to do in that situation. So it's something that it's just really, really difficult, and it's sad that our country came to this whole thing. And but I think I mentioned this to you the other day when we talked. If well, for number one, Merrick Garland, you can't help but think he has a bias against Republicans because they're the ones that kept him from becoming a Supreme Court justice. So you know, you can make the case that he's I don't use the word pun inconsequentially, but that he's trumping up charges against the president. You know,
we will. That's a good one, Jim. Trumping up Trump. So we'll go from there. And
but
there's our break music. Let's take a break, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is the Medlock Post radio show, and this is your host, Richard G. Medlock. We are back with Jim. I want to read another quote, and I think you're going to see a trend here in what's going on. There are three things in the world that deserve no mercy: hypocrisy, fraud, and tyranny. That was by Frederick William Robertson. I think we're seeing, Jim, a lot of hypocrisy, fraud, and tyranny coming out of Washington, D.C. in different forms and in different ways. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just, they call Washington, D.C. the Crystal Palace, and it's that way with the FBI too. There's, the standing joke was, you got promoted to Washington, D.C. where they replaced your brain, So I think that whole D.C. area is a whole lot different than most of the street agents out in the field. But what the point I was going to make earlier when we talked a little earlier was that hopefully if the Republicans, I hope it's a landslide in the midterms, and that being the case, if they do anything between now and November, that's another sign that like some of the commentators would say that it's just a political move to try to keep Donald Trump from running for president again, to prohibit him by law.
Yeah,
but there's nothing.
Let me jump in with that, Jim, on that thought, because it's you can call it coincidence or just whatever, because Trump is actually moving up in the polls. He's gaining ground with his endorsed candidates winning primaries. He's 153-10. And then about 10 days, 2 weeks ago, he came out with a 42-point platform, strong on law and order, strong on energy independence again, strong on building our relationships and foreign neighbors and allies, strong on helping the homeless and the mentally ill and the drug addicts, very strong again on securing the southern border and putting more agents down there, and strong on doing away with regulations and laws and things that are hampering businesses and taxes. And it was strong on I lost that train of thought, but anyway, it was very strong, and people are loving it. And they're buying into it, not only just Republicans, but Democrats and independents, because they don't like what is happening coming from the Democrat socialist radical agenda that is hurting America. So then all of a sudden he comes out with that. It's gaining momentum. And so is this a panic, desperate thing, desperate measures by desperate people? They go out, they go search his home. A three-panel judge ruled that he has to turn over his tax returns to the Congress on Monday, and on Tuesday, his New York a real estate appraiser, turned over all his documents to the FBI. So, how does that look to you?
Well, you said it very succinctly. That supports Make America Great, the Republican platform. He's basically articulating the Republican platform. So that's what Republicans want. That's what Republicans need, and they just need a strong voice to put that into effect. So yeah, I think that's why you had a lot of congressmen. They all stood up. The Kevin McCarthy and some of those all stood up and said, they come flat out and said, we want Donald J. Trump to run again. And I think what you'll find is if the Republicans take both houses of Congress, if they take the House of Representatives and the Senate, it would not surprise me whatsoever if they've already indicted him, or if they've already, who knows what, if it's in the middle of an indictment moving towards trial, why not the House of Representatives introduce a law saying to repeal that law that you can't hold office? you peel away the onion skin and said, okay, you say this is going to keep him from running. Well, we're going to change the law so he can run. And the Republicans.
If you can get Biden or whoever's president after November to sign off on that. There's a lot of things that, going back to this one quote by Jay Rosen, or actually another legal expert, if they raided his home just to get classified documents, Trump will be reelected to the White House in 2024. I said this the other day, and other times, if they come out and put criminal charges on him, or Monday I said this, if this is just a continuation of the witch hunt, because they're terrified of not only Donald Trump, they're terrified of the MAGA movement, which is gaining a lot of momentum, which the Democratic Socialists do not realize they're adding the momentum. They're putting the fuel on that fire by all these crazy socialist acts that they're implementing and tying up Americans' hands and taking their money away and their freedoms away. And they don't realize that. They've put themselves on the almost a godlike pedestal and think that nothing's going to happen to them. Your thoughts there?
Well, yeah, and I think the backlash is, again, if they take the House and the Senate, they Chuck Schumer and Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and that whole group and AOC, they may find themselves under investigation by the IRS, and they may be finding themselves under investigation by the FBI, and they may have more problems to worry about than Donald Trump if that happens.
That I hadn't looked at it at that standpoint of their alleged criminalities in there. Just on Adam Schiff alone, how many lies has he been at the podium and told over the last 6 years? It's unbelievable. So, lying to Congress is a felony, and you can go to jail for that. Let me throw let me throw something else at you here. Go ahead, Jim. Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say one more thing is I'd love to see Kevin McCarthy standing up there saying no one is immune. Nobody is immune from prosecution under the law. The same thing that Nancy Pelosi says. Everybody is equal under the law. That's what I hear Kevin McCarthy saying after he becomes Speaker of the House.
Well, he's already come out and warned Attorney General Garland. He says, save your documents and clear your schedule. We're coming after you. Now, the other thing, I read this yesterday's article in the Atlantic magazine written by David Graham, and he starts out that saying the raid on Mar-a-Lago does not prove, or it proves that we are not a banana republic because no one is beneath the law. And so I thought that kind of funny that this liberal would come out and bring out the fact, hey, no one's above the law. And when we're looking at Pelosi and Paul Pelosi and Hunter Biden and Hillary Clinton and a whole slew of people that have broken the law, they've been protected through the administrative state. And it's just, there's that hypocrisy that Frederick William Robertson was talking about, the hypocrisy, the fraud, and the tyranny. And he says that there should be no mercy for that.
Yeah, that's Richard. That's exactly, the old saying: "Be careful what you wish for." That could come back and kick them all in the right places. Hello.
Folks, we'll be right back right after this. Jim kicked us into a commercial by his comment, so we'll be right back. And we are back. This is the Medlock Post radio show, and I'm your host, Richard G. Medlock. Eugene Victor Debs. In every age it has been the tyrant, the oppressor, and the exploiter who has wrapped himself in the cloak of patriotism or religion or both to deceive over all the people. This was Eugene Victor Debs. These are the times, as Thomas Paine said, that try men's souls. And when we look at what is coming out of Washington, the media, the administrative state, it should make everybody sit back and do some critical thinking about what is going on and do some critical thinking about your positions and which side you're on. Jim, you want to add anything to that?
Well, yeah, I just think I'm reading. I can't. Senior moment of the fellow that wrote the book about media, about how biased media is, just come out. I'm reading it now, but when you take the groups, you take Planned Parenthood, you take the major media, you take groups like ultra-liberal groups, Black Lives Matter, heavily funded by, you got Bill Gates, and you got wealthy George Soros. Conservatives are really, they have wall of water in front of them there. They have to swim through before people understand what actually is going on. And it's anybody that understands the whole picture. It's a scary thing to think about. So, yeah, Richard, it is a battle for conservatives and patriots and people that know what the Constitution means and understand that the Constitution is not a ever-changing document. That it's the basis for what made our country great. That we have to be purveyors, just like you're doing on your show. Thank goodness for bringing the truth out and for showing people that something that we all know, socialism, Bernie Sanders' love of communism, we know it's the big falsehood, and that's the direction that they want to go. AOC, that's the direction they want to go. They want government control everything. So everything that chips away on our freedoms is a threat. So and they're well funded. They got tons of money. And look down here in South Carolina, how much money came in for Jamie Harrison against Lindsey Graham. And Lindsey may not be the most popular senator in the state, but anytime you have somebody overwhelmingly trying to push you out, everybody's going to push back against that, especially when it's not we the people that are making the decision. And I think that's one thing that we all have to be aware of, is that the people make the decision, not the government, and not the elitists that think that they know better what is good for the people.
And that's what we really try to hammer home on this program, is we the people are the power. And it was set up that way. And we've gone back through from the beginning, especially the last 100+ years, how communism has crept into our society and taken over things. I did a 3-part series on how it has influenced, taken over the school systems. And let me throw this out there. I brought this up one day. It popped in my head, and something you said a minute ago popped it up again. But this sex trafficking, you mentioned Planned Parenthood, and all these people that are going wacko over the Roe versus Wade ruling by the Supreme Court. And I was talking about it one day, and it popped in my head. I said, I wonder if these sex traffickers have deals with Planned Parenthood so they could bring their slaves in there. If they get pregnant, they can bring them in under disguise and get abortions, so then they can take them back out and continue to sell them instead of losing 7 or 8, 9 months of their services. What do you think about that thought?
There's a 2-part answer for what you're saying there. I think number one, I think this raid does the Democrats damage, because that kicks Roe versus Wade to the back page in the paper, and now everybody's talking about alleged violations of Trump, and at least for the past 3 or 4 days, I don't see any articles about Roe versus Wade. So maybe in a way that's a good thing. But I think the big problem with Planned Parenthood, they're not too worried about abortions. I think they're worried about losing funding. And if they have to close all those offices down there, and it's a fact that huge amounts of money, big parts of their budget, goes to support Democrat candidates. So if the state that just Indiana that just made abortions illegal, if Planned Parenthood had 50 offices in Indiana, they have no reason to keep them open. They don't. How people are going to pay for abortion counseling? No, they're not going to do that. They're not going to have any business. They're going to close up, and they're going to lose funding in Indiana. The more states they lose funding in, the less effective they're going to be. So I think their concern is not being able to be a big contributor to Democrats so they can get back what they want. I think
and that's a great point, because a lot of the funding that went to Planned Parenthood went back to the DNC. It was almost a slush fund per se.
Yeah.
And so when we start looking at all the slush funds that are being set up with Planned Parenthood and these green energy corporations that are now going to be receiving billions of dollars, part of that's going back to the Democratic Socialist, and to
right.
fight against Americans that believe in America and want to maintain their freedoms and get all these controls out of the way. We do not want to become a Cuba. We had a lady
Right.
on last week, a refugee from Cuba, and gave us some pretty interesting thoughts about what's going on and what she's seeing in America that she saw in Cuba. So we are really in trying times. We're really fighting a battle. There's a quote I keep saying over and over by John Locke that when the legislators try to take our property away and try to make us slaves, they are at war with the people. And give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on that one,
Well,
Jim.
yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I think individual freedoms are very. Although I'm not a libertarian at all, because I don't believe it's okay to have prostitution in your own house or whatever. There's some things I disagree with the libertarian platform, but I do believe that the Bill of Rights is there for a reason, and I think that as they chip away with our individual protections, the Second Amendment, and that type of thing. I think what makes us conservative and what makes us Republicans is that we stand for individual freedom, and they don't. That's pretty clear, both. They want to control, and we want to control government. So
And
it's a
that's
real easy choice for me. Yeah.
and that's part of collectivism. It
Right.
takes a
Right.
village to raise a child. They want our children. Jim, are you familiar with the 45 goals of the Communist Party and communism to take over America
Mm.
that was read into the congressional record in 1963? They were compiled by the FBI Task Force on Communism during World War II in the early 50s. You can, if you search the naked communist, the most of those goals will come up. I've been presenting those, how it applied to education and central banks and other things, and helping people understand when Nikita Khrushchev, the premier of Russia in the late 50s and early 60s, said, "We will take over America without firing a shot. We will introduce socialism through your elected officials." And next thing you know, not only do you have socialism, but you have communism.
Yes. I don't know. I can't recall that specifically, but I remember Khrushchev saying, "We will bury you," and you're right. There's always been a small. It started as a small, back when the McCarthy hearings were. It was people understood what communist was, and today's world, again with creeping liberalism. It's hard to go to a 20-some-year-old person and say, and try to explain to them why it's bad, why communism doesn't work. We're old enough; our generation knows why. I had an opportunity to when I was a police instructor, when Bush's Patriot Act came out, the State Department sent FBI instructors to New Republic. Or actually, when the Berlin Wall went down and all the satellite countries started breaking off, and I had an opportunity. I taught U.S. Constitution and law, rule of law, in Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and in Ukraine. And if I don't know how close we're running to a commercial, but one day I was standing in the road with one of my mentors, and they're all ex-communist people. They're happy to get away from Russia, but they still have that communist mentality. And we were standing along the road, and as a police officer, and he was waving people over with a flashlight. And I said, "Your cops don't carry guns; they carry flashlights." He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "What happens if he waves a car over and it decides not to do it?" And he said, he says, "They get the driver's license." And he goes, later on, a bunch of them go out to the person's home, they drag him out of the house. They beat him up, take him to prison, and he stays in prison for 3 or 4 months till they get around to trying him. And if anybody gives him any problem in the house, they beat up the people in the house too. So it's like, oh, okay, that's a pretty stark contrast between communism and the individual liberties that we have today. So
yeah, that's an interesting story, because a lot of people don't understand what communism and socialism really does. It destroys a country, and you have no rights. And I think, and we're getting short on time here, but and that's why when we talk about the Second Amendment, this is why they want gun control. They want to take our guns away, because there's no way they can take over America with the number of citizens that have weapons and know how to use them and are willing to use them to defend their freedom and their rights. So last word on that, and then we're going to have to close up shop.
Okay, I just have one little quote or one little question that I want to ask, and then I want to thank you so much for having me on. I hope I've been able to add to your show some. But my question is, when everybody showed up and protested and everything was hunky-dory with Kavanaugh, they were standing around his home and they were waving flags and wrote "My body, my choice." What do you think would happen if a huge group of conservatives would go up and surround Merrick Garland's house and protest? That's my question to think about. Again, Richard, thank you so much for. I'll end on that and let you finish. Thank you so much for having me on your show, and I hope people pay attention.
Jim, thank you so much. You've done a great contribution to what we're trying to do and the education that we're trying to get out there. Your expertise, your knowledge, your experience has been invaluable. I hope that we can have you back on the show in the future, that you're willing to come back to us. And ladies and gentlemen, we're trying to put everything into perspective for you, to give you something to think about. Like I say, if you can believe us or not believe us, just go do your homework. Sit down and think about these things. That's all we're asking you to do. If your eyes are opened, that's great. If your knowledge increases and confirms your belief in the Constitution, that's great. And that's why we're here. Now, I'll inform Jim, I did a 2-part series, The Rule of Law versus Ruler's Law, and he can go back and listen to them on the podcast. So there's many things, as we have built our podcast, that you can go back to any time, and it's not out of date because it's educational. It's like going back to a school book. Oh, wait a minute, I need something in that chapter. Let me go back and read it. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to build this up as a process that you can refer to and get resources to go search things out and make decisions on your own and be an individual. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. Jim Ferver, thank you so much for your information, and look forward to having you back. And that, folks, is the Medlock Post for today. May God bless America.